That's how you do a triple pirouette. Oh, hello. Welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry, covering the latest news, industry issues, what to see and do, and showcasing theatrical talent, whilst always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. Hello to all our listeners around the world. My name is Andrew Keats. I'm a director and your host. Now, today's guest has worked as an actor, teacher, storyteller and director. She's artistic director of the award-winning Yellow Earth Theatre Company and set up the first BEA Acting Summer School. She's also co-founder and co-AD of 1,000 Cranes and artistic associate of Artsdepot. Please welcome to the Show People podcast, Kumiko Mendl.
Hello. Oh, thank you. I love it.
Coming up on today's show, on the Soapbox, Kumiko and I will be discussing the many difficulties that face East Asian performers in the performing arts industry and why performing in yellowface is so offensive. I'll be covering all the latest dramatic news. There's new musical theatre from composer Joseph Purdue, performed by Sarah Joyce and Louis Greenslade, and throughout the show, I'll be interviewing Kumiko all about her life, career, and of course, setting the odd Show People challenge too. You're listening to the Show People podcast. Welcome to the show, Kumiko.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to see me all the way over here in leafy Wimbledon.
Oh, I've enjoyed coming down here.
So, firstly, before we even get going, enormous congratulations on the news that Yellow Earth has become a portfolio organisation. How wonderful.
It is wonderful. It basically means we can plan ahead because we've actually got funding for the next 4 years starting from April. So that's wonderful.
Is that that must be a really game-changing moment in Yellow Earth's future?
It is. I mean, I suppose in terms of actually how much money we're getting, we've probably been quite successful over the past 5 years, I would say, as a project-to-project company. But it just means we know we're guaranteed we've got that money coming in so we can plan, and then we can also hopefully leverage in more money. And it's amazing how suddenly everyone's turning to you and going, "Oh, I've got this project, and would you be interested?" You know, it's a really good, it's a good moment, and I'm very excited for the future.
And I suppose it just means you can invest so much more time in the creative side of being an artistic director rather than lots of boozy lunches with people with money going, please give us this.
Exactly. Yes, we can be a bit more in charge of what we're doing as well, and saves a lot of time sort of writing applications for every project we want to do. So that's great.
And further congratulations too on the rave reviews, and I know the company loved doing it, of Marlowe's Tamburlaine, which of course you've just done at the Arcola.
Yes, that went really well. It was quite phenomenal, and we had the amazing Lourdes Faberes, who was in the title role as Tamburlaine, and all women apart from one man in the piece. And it was it was very successful, actually.
Of course, I'm going to talk about Tamburlaine and everything else in your wonderful career later. Tell me a little bit about Yellow Earth, what it's about and what you do.
Okay, so Yellow Earth Theatre is a British East Asian theatre company, and that means we work with actors, writers, directors and creatives who are descended from East Asia. And we do that because we feel that the visibility and profile of East Asians in this country is very low. If you look into the media, look at public life, there are very few people we recognise and know who are of East Asian descent who are living here and working here. So we work with them, and we really want our stories and, on stages, as we feel we're very much part of this country. And so we work with, we do all sorts of work. We have a summer school, as you mentioned, that we run every year, where we're finding young British East Asians who are interested in theatre, and we're encouraging them into acting and looking at different pathways into the industry. We're also working with writers. We have a professional writers program, so we're developing new work, new plays. We also work in museums and in schools, and as well as producing plays that we tour around the country and taking the work outside of London, which is also very important.
When was Yellow Earth founded? When did you guys start?
So we actually began back in 1995. So it's actually 22 years old. So it's had a good, veritable, history. And there were 5 of us who founded it. In fact, I was one of the founder members. And I'm still here.
Because you used to look after specifically the educational side of Yellow Earth, didn't you?
Yeah, so we all started off as actors primarily, and then we were all in a show together, and David Say, who was at that time, he'd written the piece. He turned to us and said, look, I've been thinking about starting a theatre company. And we were all at a certain stage. And we said, okay, we're quite interested in making our own work now because we're not getting exactly a lot of other interesting work coming in. And so we started, creating work for ourselves and for other people like ourselves. And we were also interested in East and West art forms at that time. It had quite a physical angle on it at the time. And we developed work, and the company grew. And then as it grew, I became interested in doing the sort of outreach and education. I also had family. So it actually worked very well. I could manage that. And the acting became much more difficult, the touring and all that. So I started doing more focus on the outreach and participation work.
We'll, of course, end up talking a lot more about yes. Yellow Earth and the projects later. But before we delve into the depths of your career and Yellow Earth and all of the wonderful things that you've been up to, it's time for a Show People challenge. Now, anybody that follows me or follows Kumiko know that both you and I have very, very actively been campaigning about fair representation of East Asian performers in the performing arts industry. Now, usually what I would do is set you the challenge of delivering your entire CV in a minute. And actually, for those who perhaps aren't so aware of Kumiko's CV, she actually has one as a very successful actress and one as a very successful director. But I thought we might have a bit of fun because, of course, the endless other radio shows that you and I have done together, Radio 4 and Protests, we find ourselves having the same conversation over and over again. And I thought in 1 minute, perhaps you might be able to tell me all of the Caucasian actors that have played East Asian roles, either in theatre, film or TV. God. I'm hoping listeners that follow me in Kumiko's work will be giggling at this, and just to show how ridiculous history has been. Kumiko, your Show People challenge starts now.
Okay, so there was quite recently Tilda Swinton was the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, Emma Stone in Aloha, Scarlett Johansson as the Major in Ghost in a Shell. There was Jonathan Pryce in Miss Saigon. Yes. There was David Carradine, who took the role from Bruce Lee in the Kung Fu series early in the 70s. Peter Sellers, Mickey Rooney.
That's probably the most famous.
Yes. Marlon Brando, I think he did one. Fred Astaire, I believe. Katharine Hepburn. John Wayne played Genghis Khan.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
15 seconds left.
Marlon Brando, I think he played Okinawan. Yeah, I can't remember the film. Anthony Quinn, I believe. Ed Skrein. Oh no, but he didn't. He stepped down.
Well, that's pretty impressive. That is, and do you know what?
That was impressive, wasn't
it? The
it?
list literally does go on.
I'm sure there's lots more that I've missed out.
But within 60 seconds, to name that many Caucasian actors that have played roles that could have been fulfilled by East Asian actors, and yet I would be interested to ask perhaps the man on the street to name as many East Asian performers that he can think of or she can think of that's on the television right now within 60 seconds. And I bet that they would run out of names before the timer finishes. And that's got to be wrong, surely.
Yes, yeah. They probably wouldn't even be able to start,
to
be honest. I've been asking people, and a lot of people go, and then you have to jog them.
There's that one off Humans.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Benny Wong? Who?
Well, we will, of course, be discussing Kumiko's journey from growing up, attending Jacques LaCoq, through to becoming an actress, educator, director, and, of course, artistic director of Yellow Earth. But first, just a little message from this very silly chap.
Hello, this is Steve First, and you are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. A man so marvellous, he's putting bums on seats. Whether it be parakeets eating halal meats or premier athletes submitting VAT receipts. It's the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
Thank you, Steve. First, before we delve into Kumiko's CV, it's time for us to get onto our soapboxes. And of course, we want to discuss the many difficulties that face East Asian performers in the industry. And in particular, for people listening to the show that may not necessarily have considered that there were any issues. So again, if people who have followed Kumiko and my own campaigning on this issue, there may be a few things that we cover that perhaps you already know, but really what we want to do is inspire those that perhaps haven't considered those difficulties by discussion and just asking the question. Firstly, what do you think the main issue is? What is the main thing that we find ourselves having to come out time and time again in protest and in discussion about?
I just think that the people who are producing, directing plays are not all necessarily aware that there are an amazing group of British East Asian actors out there. They are assuming, I think from their unconscious bias, that we can have Caucasian, default sort of Caucasian actors playing East Asian roles, and that's fine. And they don't see a problem because they don't see us. They are just not aware that they're out there. And I think slowly things are beginning to change, but it takes time and we're still coming up against it. Because as you know, we were there last November outside the print room protesting about a play where, set in ancient China, where there were Chinese characters all played by a white Caucasian company. And that was tough because also the reaction, we got back from them was, well, this is Brechtian, this is storytelling, this is a fable, it's
set in an imaginary land,
exactly,
which ended up being on a
with
placard.
English Moors, and we're not English, etc. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so it's very frustrating, and those of us who've been in the industry for a long time, we've struggled with, being given parts, being seen for parts, and the parts that we are seen for have been really stereotypical, minimal. The Chinese waiter, the dodgy DVD seller, the sort of the femme fatale or the innocent, but very, very two-dimensional parts, and parts with no love interest, certainly not for the men. For the women, lots of, love interest, but that's all you are, love interest. So, it's about what the parts are, what are people saying by putting a Caucasian actor in a role? They're basically saying that we're not there, we don't exist.
The first question I always get asked is, well, Andrew, theatre is a representational art form. We can call a chair a boat as long as we play it. And I do understand that. Mm-hmm. I do understand that. However, my response is always the same. If you're an East Asian child or teenager and you're growing up and you're looking for role models and you're looking at what jobs you want to do, and you end up watching great films in the cinema or the television or the theatre, and you don't see somebody of a similar heritage to go, I want to be just like her, then I think we're taking away possible aspirations by making East Asian performers invisible on stage. And that's what really upsets me.
Definitely. I mean, I can see, I always cite EastEnders, but I mean, it's the flagship BBC soap opera, and we still have yet to see, an East Asian, or it can be a British East Asian, that'd be much more interesting, second, third generation, living in Albert Square. Where are the families? Where are the people? And I think it's so important that we see ourselves, because what does it do to you if you don't see yourself reflected, on the stages and screens? You can't actually say what it does, but I mean, psychologically, it must be, you're not worth anything. It's just what it feels like.
It was like growing up as a gay teenager, watching the television, and every single advert you'd watch would be between a man and a woman,
yes.
Or indeed what a man is supposed to do, and they would all be Caucasian and whatever. Whereas for me, theatre is a way. What is important to me, theatre is a way that I understand myself, and ergo, society understands itself. And this whole nonsense of, Caucasian audiences perhaps not having enough empathy with people of other races, which has also been cited, is just nonsense. I spend my life watching heterosexual drama on television.
Exactly.
I don't sit there going, well, I can't relate to that because I'm gay. In the same way, I don't think someone does.
Yeah, and we spend all our lives reading books by men. As a woman, it's like, yeah, okay. That's just. I just find that very difficult. I mean, I think for women and Caucasian actors, I mean, I think only someone from a position of privilege who has the ability to step into any part, they're the only ones who find it quite anxiety making when people from different backgrounds, disability, whether it's sexuality, when they're actually saying, hang on a minute, where are the parts for us? Why aren't we there? That's a really important, I mean, and so people get quite upset about it, saying, oh, you get this backlash, which I really, really don't like. And I think it's about, having a level playing field, everyone being able to start from a same position. And obviously that's not the case at the moment. And for me, the sort of long-term aim of the company is not really to have to exist anymore.
Yeah, I said that to you, I remember, over a gin. Yeah. Because I've seen often on Facebook where, discussions have happened and you see the term white privilege used, and then you get someone going, I grew up from a working class family, and you go, no, that's not the point. It's not about financial privilege. Yeah. It's just the simple way that somebody looks and the ridiculous nature that there are still things in this business and plenty other workplaces where you'll still be judged based on the way you look and the opportunities to work. The other issue that comes up, which really frustrates me and I think is quite controversial, I know I've been told my view is controversial, is I don't think just because, say, an Oscar Wilde play is going to be produced, I don't think because of that time frame, therefore, because of the history and the historical accuracy and all that other stuff, that you then need to just cast it with all Caucasians. No. Because who's to say that, and again, I've upset people when I say this, but I really believe it. Who's to say Gemma Chan could not play a young Queen Elizabeth in The Crown, for example? In fact, that would be absolutely wonderful. We know who Queen Elizabeth is. Why can't we see the character first rather than the actor?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I'm hoping, as we move forward, this will happen. This is beginning to happen. I'm someone who's a glass half full person, and I do think, this is why I'm running the company, because I feel at least, as artistic director of Yellow Earth, I'm able to make things happen.
Yes,
I'm able to give opportunities. I'm able to, create the work, and that's really exciting. So I'm always looking, forward, and I think I am a believer that things are changing.
Kumiko, would you mind giving a definition to what yellow face is? Because, of course, lots of people see me and you tweeting about it and bringing it up, but I don't think people know what yellow face is, what the practice is, and why we don't think it's acceptable.
Okay, so I suppose that the term comes from, Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood, when well-known actors like Mickey Rooney, even Katharine Hepburn, John Wayne, they would actually put makeup on, would yellow their skin up. They would tape up their eyes to look like East Asians. They would walk around with bandy legs, and speak in a sort of generic accent that was Oriental, and do sort of Oriental things, whatever that was.
Lots of low bowing.
Lots of ha. Yeah, I won't go into it. But it's just so, and I suppose the term is, it follows on from blackface, when there's a big history of Caucasian actors blacking up. And this is the same, but yellowing up in terms of East Asian characters. So obviously now it's a lot more subtle. They may not do the prosthetics, but they're still taking on those parts, East Asian parts that, maybe doing the accents, whatever. but it's still it's called yellow face as a sort of shorthand term. And then and in Hollywood they sort of call it whitewashing. So a lot of original, there's a lot of mangas and animes that are now being turned into films. Marvel are doing a lot of those, and working them with actors. And there's been a lot of white Caucasian actors being cast in Asian roles in that way. So someone like Ed Skrein was cast in Hellboy, which was it's a Japanese anime. So he was cast as a Japanese American character, and then there was a big uproar because it was announced, and there was a big Twitter storm. And I think it was the first time he'd realised where the origin of this character had really come from, and he did a very honourable thing and actually stepped down. He actually said, I understand people's upset and I don't think this is right and I'm going to step down from this part. And he actually refused the part, which is a massive thing to do. And, and I think that sent a really powerful message.
What about things like historical pieces? Thoroughly Modern Millie is probably the best example of a show which I just can't sit through. Things like The Mikado, which again, for the academics out there, I'm aware is how the British perceive Japan. So often, yes, I know you get the kimonos in pinstripe and this, that and the other, but you still sit there and go, it's still white people doing roles that could be fulfilled by East Asian or Southeast Asian performers. What about the historic pieces which were written at a time which we now perceive as racist? Should we just not do them anymore? What can we do with them?
I mean, I think there's ways of approaching it. I mean, there was an interesting example of, I think it was a New York-based opera company who were doing the Mikado in a very traditional way with, all white Caucasian cast. And the Asian American Actors Alliance and Equity actually, stepped in and said, look, this isn't on. This is 2017. We've got to think of other ways of presenting it. And they worked with a team of Asian American singers and actors, and they found a different way to frame the story and how to tell that story with a mixed cast. And I heard it was very successful. So I think there's really, you have to think of creative ways of how can we make this acceptable? Because, everyone says, oh, does that mean the story doesn't get told? We can't do it. And I do think people, directors, producers have to think really hard about if they can't find the actors, if they really look, because often the case is they don't look, they don't bother. But if they really look and they really find they haven't found the people, then they have to think twice about whether they should be doing it.
My thoughts on...
Well, they shouldn't be doing it.
Well, my thoughts on the fallacy that, they just aren't the East Asian performers. Look, I worked with casting director Annie Rowe, who actually cast David Henry Wong's Yellowface, and we brought her in for another one of David's plays, Chinglish, which of course we worked together on in regards to promoting and working together and collaborating and getting schools involved. Look, we didn't struggle. We really didn't struggle. And that was just for fluent, perfect-speaking Mandarin speakers. Now, if you then throw that open to British East Asians that speak English, you and I could very easily spend 2 months, I'm sure, in auditions, as long as we're giving the proper time for performers. It's an absolute fallacy that it's hard to find, that they're just not out there.
I know someone just did a count on Spotlight, just a rough count, excluding young children. There's about over 400 women on Spotlight and about 300 men, 250 men. So it just shows, there is, and then with young girls and boys, there's absolutely loads of them coming through. It's amazing.
The thing that I'd never considered, which again might be an academic's understanding, is particularly when they're getting defensive about historical accuracy. And the thing that's always thrown in my face, and indeed Susie Hung, who is, I know we've both worked with, who was in Chinglish for me, Susie always says, I'm sick of doing Shakespeare. Not because she's sick of doing Shakespeare, but she's sick of the fact that, yes, Shakespeare, look, at the end of the day, it's always a director's production when it comes to Hamlet. The setting is not important. So, yes, you can have colour-blind casting. But Susie says, look, can you put me in something where I don't have to either be the token East Asian or I don't have to be in Shakespeare? Can I just be a girl in a high school? Can I just be a woman in a show rather than having to see my race first? And I just think it just totally devalues an actor when that is the only reason to cast. It should stop.
Yeah. No, you want to be seen as an actor first and foremost, of course. And, the more people are being seen for, non-specific race parts, the better it is. Because the variety is far greater.
The last thing I want to finish up on is that term, colourblind casting.
Oh, yes. You can't be colourblind.
No.
So it's a tautology. It doesn't make sense. You see colour. So I think it should be colour-conscious casting.
Absolutely.
So that, it's a real danger, I think, to fall into this idea of, we don't see colour, because, of course, we do. And, our culture, our personalities speak through our body and through who we are. And that's, so you can't ignore colour. But I think it has to be thought through as to how, a mixed cast, great. But there also needs to be a thinking behind it.
The thing that I find so ludicrous is when you get white actors going, I believe in colourblind casting, so I should be able to play any role. I'm an actor. Now, of course, I do understand, yes, you can play any part, but should you? With Britain's history of xenophobia and racism and prejudice, and the lack of opportunities that there has been, even only within the past 100 years have we finally started seeing these changes. What about giving opportunities to those that haven't had the same start as Caucasian people? That's my argument. And also I kind of don't mind who is cast in a show. Just make sure you see people who are non-white actors. That goes across the board. Why do you have to see 100% Caucasian people for a play just because it's, I'll go back to the importance of being honest, just because it's Lady Bracknell? Why can't you have an East Asian Lady Bracknell?
Yeah.
Why not?
Exactly.
Oh, historically it's inaccurate. Do we care? I just think it's important nowadays that people have, especially in these times of Brexit and xenophobia and racism, that people of all shades, colours, sizes, abilities, whatever, if they're invisible, then how do you get kids to talk about them at the dinner table or aspire or connect? And if it's just whitewashing, then it's very clear only a very large but singular portion of society are going to benefit. And it's tedious and hurtful.
But I think you also have to be careful about, when you're saying, why not having an East Asian Lady Bracknell? Fine. But then that needs to be in the context of how you place the play, because otherwise you're doing colourblind casting in a way. You could say, couldn't you?
I suppose so, but then with my instinct on that, because what I would like to think is the colour conscious casting thing you mentioned. That for me makes sense. And colour conscious is about lifting up people who are perhaps not on the same level of privilege or opportunity. Colour blind, of course, is when anyone can play anything, Scrabble, grab whatever part you can. The colour conscious side of it, I really, really like, because it's just about lifting people up that perhaps don't have the same opportunities.
But I think it's also, also thinking about if we place, a British East Asian in the Lady Bracknell, what interesting things can that be saying within the play?
Well, I see what you mean. So actually use it. Using that. You must be so sick and tired, just as an artist, just wanting to talk about producing or directing great works, and yet even now on this podcast, I have to go, let's talk about these issues because it's important.
Yes,
Whereas when I sit down at a podcast, people go straight into talking to me about, what you're directing. Because, of course,
exactly,
the battles are just not the same. And I hope anybody listening to this, next time you hear about yellowface or whitewashing, perhaps you might understand just those extra battles that East Asian performers are having to fight now.
Hi, this is Annette Badland, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
Thank you, Annette Badland. So let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. You didn't say it at all. You must know the sound of music.
Oh, yes.
Fine. You and your loathing of musical theatre, it seems. Start at the very beginning.
I can't say it's my genre, but yes. See, I'm British East Asian, mate. I don't have the same cultural background as you.
Oh no, but you must love The King and I. That must be your favourite. Surely.
Never seen it actually.
No, that's the
I'm
quote.
proud to say.
Kumiko, that will be the episode title. King and I ? Never seen it.
Yeah.
Kumiko Mendl. Brilliant. So, Kumiko, tell me, where did you grow up? What was a young Kumiko Mendl like?
Oh my God! Well, I was brought up in Watford. Watford, mate. So not far from London, but far enough to be its own little town, I suppose. And what was I like? I had amazingly thick hair. Everyone commented it didn't grow downwards, it grew outwards. And I was one of 3 children, and my mother was Japanese and my father was a refugee from Germany. So, and I will never forget my caretaker at school saying to me one day, "Oh, you're the daughter of our enemies." So that made me feel very welcome.
Yeah.
Amazing. But no, I mean, couldn't be further from the truth. My family are actually Quakers. So lived in a very peaceful household.
Kumiko, what were your earliest memories of discovering the theatre? Was that as a little girl, or did you discover it later in life?
Yeah, I can't remember the first show I ever went to see, or I definitely didn't have a moment where I went, "Oh, that's what I want to do." I think I was quite loud as a child. I had a big voice, and my father was actually, I think he always called himself an actor manqué. He thought he could have been an actor, but he used to do very good Hitler impressions, apparently.
Great.
Yes. So my parents sent me to this little drama group up the road. So I started doing drama there. And I was probably about 9, 10 or something like that. So I started doing that, and I did some at school, and I quite enjoyed it. So that's, and I've always done it, actually. Funnily enough, that's how I started, and I continued. And funnily enough, I started in this drama group. They used to send you to these little competitions, music drama festivals. And I'd go in for the duologue and for the monologue. And then for some reason I started doing mime, being successful in these mime competitions, going in for this festival and winning the cup, for mime. So actually literally doing some mime, whatever that was. I mean, it wasn't Marcel Marceau box quite like that. There was no technique to it. It was just, doing a scenario, but without actually speaking. That I suppose that was interesting. And I never went to dance classes, but it was funny because LaCoq thought I was a dancer, which is interesting, but I never went to dance. I've got 2 left feet, really. So it was, but I used to dance around like mad in my living room. I always remember that, put records on and would just dance. But I never went to formal dance classes or anything like that. And then I started going to some classes at City Lit. Great place. They used to do, and it was back in the days of Ilia. Shows how old I am. And when you were unemployed, you could go on the dole and for £1 I could pay for a whole course for 1 term.
That's insane.
Which was amazing. And I had this brilliant teacher called Lorna Marshall, who actually worked a lot with Yoshio Ida from Peter Brook's company. So she knew a lot about Japanese theatre. That got me interested in that as well. But then she'd also gone to LaCoq, and she said, "Oh, you should go to LaCoq." And a couple of other people said, "Oh, I think you should go to LaCoq." And I'd never heard of LaCoq. I was like, what's LaCoq? But I had also been going to the Mime Festival. That was something I'd been doing. My parents took me up to the Mime Festival every year to London to go and see, because I'd obviously have this thing about mime. And saw really interesting companies there. And one of them was the Moving Picture Mime Show.
What's that?
That was a brilliant trio of 3 guys, David Gaines, and the guy who did Warhorse, Toby Sedgwick, and another guy, I think an American guy, another guy. But they did some brilliant, just really fun pieces, very clever, but minimal words. I mean, there were probably a few words, but it was just very, very accessible work, and I just really enjoyed it.
What was it about mime especially that got you so excited? Because, of course, I think, as you said, we all have these sort of old cartoon, impressions of mime, of people being boxers or pulling ropes. I mean, just go into detail, like the art of mime. What was it that you learnt about that time?
I say mime. I suppose it's minimal words. It's not using words, but only using words when really absolutely necessary, because actually the body can talk a lot and says so much more. And obviously, when you put words on, it's another layer. But I think with LaCoq, the LaCoq training, he's not a mime teacher and it's not a mime school at all, but it's starting from the gesture. So everything starts from the gesture. The impulse comes from the gesture, not from the brain, as it were. It goes into the body. So it's finding that connection, and then the words come after. Language comes later, because obviously you start moving. Language comes later as a child, as a baby. So
I wonder if, as a director, whether you find yourself reading actors' body signs before they start speaking when there's a problem, or if you're in a business meeting going, "Oh, we've got a problem," by observing the body in that way.
Yes, you can tell a lot.
I'm going to fold my arms now. And
yes, behave. I can tell that's what you're thinking. Yeah.
So tell me about that transition to moving to France and studying LaCoq. How old were you, and what was it like to leave home behind?
Well, actually, I didn't go early. I was a mature student. I'd already done a degree at university. So I went off to university because I looked at drama schools. And I just thought, I had this impression that it was full of very rich, snobby, privileged people. And
there's an element of truth in that.
Yeah, and for some reason I just didn't feel right for me. And I also thought, I want to go to university. My brother had gone, and I just thought, it looks like you have a good time. So I went to university, and I was going to do a drama course, and I ended up not doing a drama course. I ended up doing this education course with drama to teach, because that was something to fall back on. It's the usual thing you're saying, just to be secure. So I ended up going to do that. And then in my final year, I flunked something. I was doing I had to do my teaching certificate, and it was a long story, but I flunked that, and I had some time available. And this guy had come back from Nicaragua, and he'd written this play. So I was in this play. It was like 4 hours long. It was great. And from then we thought, right, we're going to tour this. So that was the first time I thought, I could actually be an actor. So then I did acting. I sort of acted in this show. We toured for 2 years with this piece called Hey Nicaragua. And it was great. And I loved it. And then I met somebody who also said, you should go to LaCoq, because their husband had gone to LaCoq, and he'd seen me and said, you should go. And that's when I started thinking about it. So I went to LaCoq when I was probably about 24, 5. And it was amazing. I mean, it was difficult because I was leaving a long-term partner behind. So it was like a massive break with everything. And I went early because I thought I'll set myself up. I'll learn French, because my French was dreadful. It was like schoolgirl French. I couldn't understand anything anyone was saying. I'd never really spent any time in France.
J'adore la foot.
Exactly. Well, I couldn't understand what it was saying. And I went to live with this elderly relative who lived there, and she spoke impeccable English. And it was so embarrassing. I just couldn't even begin to practice my French on her. And then anyway, I nearly went home. But luckily I stayed on, went there, and then it was just amazing.
Who were your role models when we spoke earlier about how invisible British East Asians are, and certainly at that time, who were the big role models in your life growing up that made you want to be an actress? Well,
I suppose I'm thinking when I met Lorna Marshall, who was teaching at City Lit, who'd worked with Yoshi Oida, who was this fantastic actor with the Peter Brook Company. I was so inspired, and I did a 2-week workshop with him, which was incredible. And that was very inspiring. And I thought, not that I'm anything like Yoshi Oida, but he was very inspiring, and that sort of work I was really interested in at the time. So that was, but looking on TV or thinking of actors, I couldn't name any, so it was, it was very much in a sort of, the way I came in was in a very non-mainstream way, I suppose.
And what were the lessons that you learnt at LaCoq? What are some of the principles that perhaps you keep in your life now, or things that you were told that you've held on to in later life?
I think many things. I think the pedagogy, the training there is just quite unique. And he always said at the time, you're not going to understand anything for at least 5 years. And it's all about how you structure and how you create a piece of theatre, and what works and what doesn't work. And that's what you're constantly looking for and trying to find out during the course of those 2 years. And I think, what have I taken with it? There's so many things. I think a sense of ensemble is really important. Even if you've got you're in a big musical, you've got a star system. You're working as one. And how you make a ensemble really work. How you create that.
Looking at some of your earlier. Some of your earliest work, you've done things, for example, The Gate, you've worked at Tara Arts, you did things at the Buyer Theatre in Fife, which I don't know much about.
The Buyer Theatre in St Andrews in Fife in Scotland, and that's where I got my equity card.
So I was going to ask.
In those days, you needed your equity card to be a professional actor.
And how did you get those early jobs? Was it just auditioning, or were you involved in creating them even then?
I'm just trying to think. So with The Buyer, it was an audition. But, you used to look at the stage. And I did join an agency quite early, a cooperative agency where actors run it. So that was quite a good way to get to know the industry. Because I didn't come in through a traditional, I didn't go to drama school. I didn't get an agent off the back of drama school. You don't get one off the back of LaCoq. So I went and joined an agency. And through that way you discover, who the people are, how the industry runs to an extent, and also that you'd get the SBS call sheet. That's how they sent out information. And so you get castings through that way.
I'm going to be talking to Kumiko all about what happened when she arrived back in London and the various jobs that she did. But first, just a little message from this rather lovely chap.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. So before we delve into the rest of Kumiko's CV, it's now time for dramatic news. In today's top stories, following a critically acclaimed season at New York's Lincoln Center, where it won numerous awards, including the Tony Award for Best Musical Revival, Rodgers and Hammerstein's The King and I will be presented at the London Palladium for a limited season in spring 2018. The King and I will feature the stars of the Lincoln Center production. Reprising her Tony Award-winning performance will be Kelly O'Hara as Miss Anna and Tony and Oscar nominee Ken Watanabe as the King. The King and I will be presented at the London Palladium for a strictly limited engagement from the 21st of June to the 4th of August 2018. Maddalena Alberto returns to the coveted title role of Evita, for which she received critical acclaim in the 2014 West End revival at the Dominion Theatre on the 6th of December 2017 in Manchester. Following the smash hit run in the West End, Bill Kenwright's production of Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber's masterpiece is set to thrill audiences again across the UK and beyond. Portuguese-born Maddalena will be taking her unique interpretation around the world in countries such as Luxembourg, Dubai, Croatia, Bulgaria and Italy, as well as major cities in the UK such as Manchester, Birmingham and Glasgow. The Old Vic has announced the conclusions of its investigation into Kevin Spacey's conduct during his time as artistic director of the theatre. In response to several allegations, an official investigation was opened and an external law firm was engaged. A confidential email was set up for people to report incidents and 56 responses were received. 20 of the respondents had personal allegations regarding the actor's inappropriate behaviour, 16 of the 20 were former staff and none were audience members. Lawyers recommended that 14 of the individuals contact the police about the incidents, 3 of which have already done so. In a statement, the Old Vic apologised for not creating an environment or culture where people felt able to speak freely and announced steps to create a safer working environment at the venue, which they call a new way forward. As well as a refocused guidance and training, this will include the appointment of guardians from across the organisation to champion best practice and act as a first point of contact for those who don't want to reach out through the formal channels. Anyone with a complaint about Kevin Spacey's behaviour can still contact confidential@oldvictheatre.com. Have you got a news story that you would like to send in to the Show People podcast? If so, please just email info@arian-productions.com and I'll do my very best to share with our listeners.
Hi, this is David Bedella, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
So, Kumiko, you arrived back from your training. What were your hopes? What were your fears as a young actress?
Well, when I left Paris, I actually went to Edinburgh because I went to replace somebody who was in a company up there. She was actually a Japanese actress who'd been at LaCoq, and I went because she was leaving. So I spent a year in Edinburgh, which was interesting, not what I was expecting. And while we were there, a group of us who had been at LaCoq set up a new company. So we did some work up there, and we were at the festival, and we were exploring masks because I love mask work. But then after a year, I got so fed up with the weather, because even in summer, the hoar, that horrible smog that covers Edinburgh, it was so depressing. It was cold, and I felt really far away, actually. I really felt far away, and it's a very odd thing. I felt very English in Scotland, which is quite strange, because you're aware of one's accent, and the Scots have a strange, not strange, but you just felt very conscious you weren't Scottish. Mm-hmm. So, and it's quite, a small community in terms of actors, and everyone knows everyone, and didn't feel part of that at all. So I came back down to London, and funnily enough, I went down and I opened the stage one morning and looked in there, and there was an ad for a movement director with a company called Moulin Theatre,
right,
which was one of the first British East Asian theatre companies.
Yeah,
and they were doing a Japanese kyogen piece called The Magic Fundoshi. And kyogen, for those you don't know, is like comedy plays that are sort of put in between no plays, which are very serious with Have the Mask. And I thought, my LaCoq training movement, this sounds perfect. So I went along and met Glenn Goey, who was then the artistic director, and he said, yes, come along. And that's how I first encountered British East Asian actors.
Yeah.
And in that company was David Say, Daniel York,
Aww.
Adrian Pang, Anna Chen. Yeah, but it was amazing. So that was quite incredible. But of course, I was very enthusiastic with all my LaCoq stuff, and I'm not sure everyone took to it, to be honest.
I don't know. I like the idea of seeing Daniel York doing some mime work. I imagine that
I
probably
don't
went
think he
down
was enamoured with it, I was saying.
Those who don't know, do check out. Daniel York is a wonderful actor that is a friend of both of ours, and it was extremely influential in regards to the protests. And if you are interested in some of the issues we raised at the beginning of the show, do check out Daniel's work. So how long did you stay within that company?
Well, that was a one-off, actually, I have to say. But then, as a result of that, because I met David, he then said, I've written this play at Polka. Will you come and audition? So I went and auditioned, and I got the role. And that was the company, the company of 5 actors that started Yellow Earth in the end. It was quite.
And how old were you at that point?
You don't know my age. Probably not. Probably coming up to 30.
So quite a lot of achievements, really. Certainly at that time, to have almost travelled parts of Europe and Scotland, and also to be able to use those physical skills, which I imagine some listeners might think might be quite a specific skill.
Well, I think one of the most amazing experiences I had as an actor was actually working on Blue Remembered Hills, which was a play that we did with Yellow Earth with David Glass. I don't know if you know him. He's a fantastic director and performer. He actually comes from a very much a mime background, physical theatre. But we had a wonderful group of actors, mixed casts, mixed ethnicities, and we did the quintessential, piece that was the Dennis Potter piece, Blue Remembered Hills, which is a group of 5 kids who go off to, who are left feral in the Forest of Dean with terrible consequences. But I mean, it was fantastic to play. It was liberating. It was just a wonderful rehearsal process. We went out into Highgate Woods and actually, did some of the work there, and we also in the show, and it was just a wonderful. And we all shaved our heads.
Of course you did.
Yeah, as you do. It was incredible. No, I mean it was quite wonderful. I mean that was a really good experience.
It sounds like a really visceral time.
It was.
It sounds like a time that was alive. And I suppose, and this is what I find myself saying to a lot of actors who come to me and just go, "Please give me a job," and that's it. It sounds like you were creating, even at that young age, creating so much work yourself. And it's no wonder that you would then obviously go on to form Yellow Earth and work with Artsdepot and Thousand Cranes and all these other companies.
Exactly. I think that's very much part of the LaCoq training, because you come out not just as an actor but also as a director, also as a theatre maker.
When you weren't working as an actress, just to give a little bit of hope for our new actors, What were some of the terrible jobs that you had to do to pay the bills?
I mean, it is really different nowadays because, in my day, I could still go on the dole. I could actually say, I'm an actor, I'm out of work, I can sign on and I can get, some benefits to keep myself going. But I did do, obviously, I did work, I did temping jobs, and I used to be an art class model.
Wonderful.
Which I wouldn't do now. It was far too cold. And I so I'd have to have about 5 heaters and then I'd fall asleep. That wasn't very good either. But that was cash in hand. That was helpful, finding cash in hand jobs. What else did I do? What else did I do? I'm trying to think. I've been really fortunate, I have to say, that I've managed to make ends meet. I mean, I live very modestly. That helps.
Mm-hmm. What's been the hardest job that you've done as an actress, and why?
Ooh, hardest job. I did a job at the National Theatre. I was in the Cottesloe, and I played Roxana in Cyrano de Bergerac opposite a Bollywood actor, and that was difficult for all sorts of reasons because I think he was expecting to come over and play opposite Diana Rigg or someone. And it was like this unknown person with this unknown company. And it was a difficult situation. And in the end, and we had this lovely tour set up to tour around India afterwards. I was so excited. And then we got a letter about 3 weeks before the end of the whole tour to say, I don't think I'll be joining you. I really hope you'll find a replacement for me and I wish you all the best. And it was like, right. I mean, there was lots of problems. It's one of those things that was sort of like right from the beginning, things weren't quite right in place. So it was a tricky job. And so the tour actually got cancelled because, of course, they weren't going to find it. The reason why we were going to India was because of him. Actually, my friend who was working with Shared Experience at the time took that tour up.
Really?
She had a lovely time and she went around all these cities all around India. Yes.
What did you do to cope with, again, as one director to another, what kind of things did you do to cope with working with a difficult co-star? Is there any advice you can give?
I mean, to be fair, I don't think he was difficult per se. It was more the situation. It was the context we were in. We had, there was a difficulty with the director who actually was also from India but had never worked with this guy, and he'd seen one of her shows and hadn't liked it. So that wasn't a good start, So there was all that going on. I sort of, and we had someone who left quite early on, another cast member. Yeah, it was one of those. But also there was, the rest of the cast were lovely. I mean, everyone was lovely and we did our best and we reworked it with the staff director at the National and it became a completely different show in lots of ways and it was much stronger and much better. But you learn a lot. I think, you've got to, you get these productions which for some various reasons don't all, because there's so many aspects to theatre. I mean, to make it successful it needs so many ingredients and if you have a few that are just not quite right, it can all fizzle away. So I think you still learn a lot from doing it and being professional, getting on with the job, getting the most out of it that you can, and then, it was a great experience. I mean, I wouldn't, it was fantastic. And there was lots of really positive things about it. And one of the great things, actually, afterwards, I got offered a part in Top Girls, which was just brilliant. And we had a fantastic time.
Which part? Can I guess the part that I think it's going to be?
Lady Nijo.
Oh, no.
But, I mean, I was Lady Nijo, but I also played Sharon, and I also played, I played the young girl from Ipswich, and I played another woman, and it was great actually because it was both parts of me. So actually, I really enjoyed it. This was a wonderfully diverse cast. We had Shelley Silas, we had Josephine Welcome, we had Stella Duffy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was and Gillian Wright from EastEnders, and then also, and Janet Steele was the director who used to run Carly, and it was a great production. And Sita, who played another woman. So it was a real mixed cast. It was a really, really, so that sort of restored my faith in good productions and good theatre.
I can see from your CV as well, because, I mean, just the acting CV alone is nearly 40 credits. What are the other pieces that have been important in your career and why? And what were the lessons learned when you were working on them?
I mean, like I said, the Top Girls was great because I could play the Japanese side and British side. I enjoyed that. It was really interesting to do. And it's a great piece, actually. It's really well written. What else? I've done, I've created my own work for young children, which I love. And I do enjoy devising and creating roles, so you can play to one's strengths. And that's very satisfying. What else have I done? Can't think of anything else. Oh, I played Lysistrata, actually. Lysistrata.
Go on.
I love that piece. And we did it it was a group of us from City Lit, and we did a great show, actually. And then one of the guys made these amazing appendages, genitals, and wonderful extra bits that we all wore. And Edoardo Palozzi, do you remember the sculptor? No,
I don't actually. He's
a fantastic sculptor, and he came. I remember him coming. We were in a pub theatre upstairs, and he came in one night with a bottle of sort of fizzy, and he sat at the back and ate his sandwiches and watched and really enjoyed it.
Oh,
it was great. Yeah,
and you've travelled all over the world. I mean, looking at your CV, you've been to Singapore, to Finland, to Wimbledon,
yes, to Dubai and to Spain, and funnily enough, just about all my international travelling has been with Polka Theatre, which is just down the road from here.
It is.
It's a fantastic place.
So that's another thing to ask. I on a previous Show People episode, myself and Annette Badland were talking about the importance of creating content on television for children. Mm-hmm. Why do you associate yourself with children's theatre, as indeed Annette was talking about how you can get some quite snooty people going... Yeah. Children's work. You said, but it all changes, doesn't it, when Harry Potter comes along and the paychecks come? Let's talk a little bit about the work you've done for children.
Yes, it's been something very close to my heart because one of the things I did at university, I did actually education studies, so I was training to be a teacher and I worked with young children, but I thought, I don't like the school system, this doesn't suit me. And so I've sort of came full circle, and when I started doing the education outreach sort of work for Yellow Earth, and I had kids, and that made quite a difference because suddenly I wasn't as flexible in terms of my time. I couldn't do all the touring as easily as I had once done, and especially when the second one came along, and they were like 5 years apart. So suddenly one was in school and the other one's just born, so it's much more tricky. And children. So I started looking at children's theatre because it also fitted into my timetable. I could do it during the daytime at the weekends. And I just love it. And I just found children as an audience are so honest. And you can't get away with anything. They spot bullshit a mile off. And, it's a sobering experience, but it's really good. And I just love their energy, their passion. There's no cynicism. So it's quite liberating in that sense. So I've always really enjoyed working with, for young audiences and with young children. And I think you can actually have a you can be so creative, and yet, you've got these boundaries, you've got these, not boundaries, but these sort of limitations in terms of understanding, not what they understand, but, how you present work, how does it connect, because we all forget what we were like as kids, we think we remember, but that's one thing we don't know because we're not kids anymore. And of course, kids now growing up have very different, experiences and to our own childhoods, it's quite distant. But so finding that connection, what is it, is really exciting.
And I think the power of theatre now could perhaps be even more powerful than it was on me as a child, particularly as everything is so two-dimensional and iPad and iPhone-based and just staring into these glowing screens. Whereas if you put a pyrotechnic on stage, perhaps it might be a little bit louder than, say, it was my generation, because you're so used to looking out the car window as your entertainment on a 45-minute journey rather than people playing with fucking Peppa Pig or whatever it's called, and all these apps. And I wonder if there would be a difference between a child from my generation and your generation perhaps to now. And
I think there's a fear that, children can't sit down and listen. But I think, every child will listen to a story. Of
course.
They will, whatever, and if you can get them and you can take them on that journey, they'll come with you, whatever, it's far more exciting than their screens, I would say. But, it's getting convincing the parents, the families, to get them into the theatre, and have that experience. And nowadays, there's less and less opportunities for theatre to go into schools. Less and less kids are being exposed. Dramas being, stopped in schools. It's not part of the STEM subjects. Arts is not seen as one of the core curricular subjects now. So we're seeing massive knock-on effects. I think they're going to come, if things don't change. So,
tell me how. Now, it sounds to me like even from being a young girl, that there was always a innate ability and understanding of being able to create something from nothing, whether that be with your body and those mime competitions to the theatre companies that you've created. Tell me about the transition, though, when you decided, now I want to be a director, and where that decision came from, and the different challenges that presents as a director, perhaps compared to when you're an actress.
That's a good question, because I didn't really have that moment where I went, I'm going to be a director. Because for me, it was, I had a project in mind and I wanted to do it. And I thought, I know how I want to do this. So I ended up doing it and directing it. That was, and then at that point with the company, it was going to be one of another, there was going to be 2 productions going out. This was going to be one of them going out to families, children and families. And then the other production didn't happen and it became the main show. So that was sort of my first full professional directing. And to be honest, I found it quite stressful. And it's not my, I have a sort of quite an ambivalent feeling about directing. If I had all the time in the world, I'd love to direct, but I find running a company and directing really, really hard. And I just admire people who are able to do both, but I find, and also I have family as well. So I've got other things that I've got to be looking after, and I have another company, the Thousand Cranes that I still run. So, I just have to be careful with my time. And I find directing takes a lot of time up, because people think, oh yeah, directing, well, that must be fun. You're just in charge and you can boss everyone around. But, it's you've got to get the right team together. That's really key. That's a real skill, casting well, and then bringing everybody up together and bringing the best out of everybody. And I just feel, yeah, I don't know. It's a funny old thing, because I do enjoy it when I do it, but it's a bit like giving birth. You forget about the pain afterwards, but it's so painful at the time.
Well, I'm not going to dare make any comment on whether I know anything about what it's like to give birth. No, but what I will say is that, so you've just mentioned it, and I mentioned it at the top of the show. Of course, you also have, A Thousand Cranes, your other company. So how does that differ from Yellow Earth, and how did that start, and how did you get involved?
Well, Thousand Cranes is really, there's 2 of us running it, another children's director called Vicky Ireland, who used to run Polka Theatre for many years. And so she was very much she was there. She directed the Magic Paintbrushes where Yellow Earth started. So we've always known each other. And in a way, she's a bit like a godmother. And she's always been someone I've really enjoyed working with and discussing with. And she's very passionate about children's theatre. And we came together. We actually I was programming some work for Japan Festival Day at the Artsdepot in North Finchley, because I live not that far from it, and there's quite a big Japanese community up there, and we were looking to program some work and bring all sorts of different workshops in, as well as a theatre piece, and we couldn't find anything. So someone said to me, why don't you do something yourself? I thought, oh, okay. And then why didn't you ask Vicky to direct it? And I was like, oh, I don't know if she's want to direct me, well, and then so I approached her and she said, yeah, of course. So we did this one woman show, which I did, which was like 3 stories put into one, called Tales from Old Japan, and it went really well. And we started touring it, and that's how the company began. And then we sort of been doing like a play, creating a new show every 2 years or so, and then touring it for about a year and a half, over a period of time. And it's worked really well. And we've got a new one coming up in the spring called The Little Mochi Man. But it's for children. So it's Japanese, it's a very Japanese focus as well. So it's like many of the stories I grew up with as a child, I really wanted to share with children here. And also looking at different art forms like paper making, like origami, haiku, just different Japanese art forms, and we sort of bring them into the piece to create a world.
The thing that you're so synonymous with is childhood. That's the thing I absolutely love. And of course, when we're children, that's often when we're at our most playful. And I just think as a quality for a director and a producer and an artistic director and a storyteller and an educator and all these other wonderful things, that innate understanding of play rather than being the teacher, being the authority figure and facilitating play.
Yeah.
I'm sure that must have something to do with all of your successes.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I think, LaCoq talks about le jeu all the time, and, that's so important. That's key to it, really. And I think, if we have that playfulness on stage, things become alive. They're not dead. We're not just going through rote. It's something that happens and is innate to all of us. And we are so often as adults, we sort of lose all that and we forget that. But that's why I think I keep doing theatre, because it keeps me young.
And I must ask, so you mentioned earlier about meeting, David Say and people, those founding members of Yellow Earth and creating that company. Tell me about establishing the first British East Asian summer school. Now, I think that was in 2010.
Yes.
Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Tell me about that, because that's a wonderful, remarkable achievement. Again, coming back to your education background.
Yeah, no, that was really good, because we were thinking about how we can attract more young British East Asians into the industry, really, and encourage them to think about training as well, because we were noticing people coming in, but they didn't have much training, if any. And, we like it or not, we become sort of representatives of the whole community. When we go to every audition, they're looking at a British East Asian and going, right, this is what British East Asians are like. So if you get someone who's not strong, it tars everybody. So the point is to really try and bring everybody up to the best they can be. And we were very fortunate that one of our trustees was at the time running Aura, the Academy of Live and Recorded Arts in Wandsworth, which is one of the accredited drama schools. And he said, why don't we do something together? Because we've been doing some work with deaf actors. We can raise some funds. We run a summer school, excuse me. And so that's what we did. And we've been able to do that every year. And thanks to Aura, they're very much supporting it financially. They see it as part of their work as well. So we managed to we bring in professional tutors, and they do voice, movement, acting for camera, radio, improvisation, different classes in the morning. And then every year we focus on a different aspect of acting. So this past year we actually did acting for camera. So they made 2 short films, which was fantastic. And I'm just really proud of all the students who've come out, because many of them are actually in the industry and working and doing really well.
I was at a drama school which will remain nameless at a showcase.
I'll look it up afterwards.
No, I was at a showcase.
Okay.
I won't say where it is, because it really upsets me, because one of the members of staff there gestured with rather large arms and went, "Look at this year." Literally all the photographs went, "Look at this year." And I couldn't help myself, and anybody that knows taking me to the theatre, it's very tricky to keep my mouth shut sometimes. And I said, yes, they're all white. I couldn't help myself. And I doubt I'll ever work at that school now. But I said, they're all white. And he said, well, Andrew, they've got to audition in the first place. And I just think, come on, that's nonsense. You've got to go out and seek, go out and find, go out and encourage. Yeah. And look, what your summer school is doing, I don't doubt, is doing more for young British East Asians in this country than most of our accredited drama schools. And I think that is shameful. And I'm delighted, with the Arts Council funding and the work you do. But if there is anybody listening to this that is connected to their drama school, that is looking for ways to diversify and work with Yellow Earth, what can they do to get in touch?
I have to say that drama schools are getting in touch, and they are very aware that they need to do more. So yes, they can contact me via email, and but also I think, and they're offering our students waiver fees for auditions, which is great. Mm-hmm. Some of them are, so that, and encourage more people to do that and come to us, because we have some really, very exciting young people who are looking to actually do, go to drama school. And also, I think those are the key things to do. And I think, going out, running outreach workshops. I like the word outreach, but that's what, in terms of going into schools, going into colleges, which Aura does a lot of, and I know a lot of them do, is really important. We also have a bursary that we give out to a British East Asian graduating actor. Mm-hmm. And that's really to also try and raise their profile and to encourage more people to think about drama school training, and also to give them a bit of a sort of lift up, once they leave, because it's, once you're out the other end as well, it's not all easy.
For everybody listening to this that has heard something that Kumiko has mentioned that they would be interested in pursuing, either the bursary or the summer schools or the various children's shows or other Yellow Earth or Thousand Cranes productions that are coming up, all of the links for all of these things will be in the show notes. So do have a little look and you'll find all of the things that we've discussed there. Now, just to, before we get into your future and other things you're going on to do, so what was it like to be appointed artistic director of Yellow Earth? How, based on all of these experiences that you've had, are you going to guide that company? And what are you hoping to do and are doing?
Well, I mean, it's a very, I take my responsibility very seriously, because I feel, because of the lack of work and perceived how people perceive British East Asian actors still within the industry. I think, this is a really important role to play and job to do. So taking it on was quite, wasn't it easy sort of, oh yeah, this would be brilliant, this would be easy. It's not easy. I think any artistic director would say that, it's often quite a lonely job. You're sort of there, in the end you have to make these decisions. But I'm really hoping that, I do know I'm a good listener, and I think it's really important to listen to people as well. It's not just about, oh, I want to do this, this is my show. It's about, I feel like I'm an enabler, and and I feel very comfortable doing that, and I want to enable things to happen, and I hope that's what we can continue to do. And I really want to raise the profile, continue raising the profile, raise the bar, even in terms of how people view British East Asian theatre, British East Asian actors, writers, directors. I want to see us in the mainstream, as well as doing the more experimental work as well. There's all sorts of people, and everyone's doing all sorts of work, and it's very exciting. And I want to see lots of new, young, excited, dedicated, passionate British East Asian actors coming up and through.
Well, I think if anybody is to take that remarkable legacy from Yellow Earth and do that, and with all of the experience that we've spoken about in your career, there is nobody better suited for the job. And just good luck with everything, mate. And we'll discuss the future in a moment.
Hi, this is Robert Duncan McNeil, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
Now it's time for the Show People platform, bringing you a composer or playwright that you may not necessarily have heard of. And today it's Joseph Purdue, who is a young composer who writes for both film and theatre. He's written 2 original musicals, Unfolding Tales and Legends of Aramar. He took an interest in film scores about 8 years ago whilst learning piano, and his influences are Academy Award winners James Horner and Alan Menken. And indeed, it was Alan Menken's Disney scores which led Joseph to musical theatre. Today's song is performed by Lewis Greenslade and Sarah Joyce from Joseph's new musical Unfolding Tales, which is the story of J.R.R. Tolkien. Here is Still So Close.
Who do I look to now to defend my case? Guardians of earth become aware. Life has escaped my hands. For my children now, listen please. Angels, to you I bow. Would someone make a sound? I hear you. We are still so close. With the purest love I surround you. So I will take care of your boys while I still take care of you too. So do not fear, they shall not come to harm. As long as I'm here, I will reach my hand out. So keep calm. I will guide them, I promise you. Mother, I've missed you so, and I won't let go of this view with you here beside me. Together once again, long I've missed your voice and your touch, how you appear with poise. So where there's love, there's light. Where there's light, there's hope. Hope enough to bring them both back home. A mercy will be shown. I hear you. We are still so close. With the purest love I surround you. Surround me. So I will take my troubles while I take care of you. I see you so clearly. So do not fear, they shall not come to harm. As long as I'm here, I will reach my hand out. So keep calm. I will guide them, I promise you. I'm so proud of the man you are, and I will love you till the end of time.
Now, if you enjoyed that and would like to find out more about Joe, you can listen to previews of that cast recording in the form of audio and video recordings at www.joepurdue.com/music, or on his very active Facebook account, which is www.facebook.com/unfolding tales. Now, are you a playwright or a composer and you would like a little bit of exposure? Then please do write to me at info@arian-productions.com. And as always, as long as you can send me a quality recording of your work, I'll be delighted to share it with our Show People podcast listeners. And who knows, something might just happen.
Hello, this is Kim Ismay, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats, and I hope you're having a wickedly interesting time.
Thank you, Dame Ismay. So, Kumiko, that horrible question, what's next?
It's not horrible. It's wonderful.
I suppose it depends on what you've got coming up, and you're always busy. So.
We are busy. So for Yellow Earth, we've got Typhoon Festival, which is our international play reading festival. We've got 8 plays from all around the world by writers of East Asian descent. We'll be on at Soho Theatre and Rich Mix, and it's over a week. So it's from the 22nd of November to the 26th. So the weekend will be at Rich Mix, and from Wednesday to Friday we'll be at Soho. And we've got some really, really exciting plays and some brilliant directors and casts. So it's going to be really interesting. Our next production, full production, will be a co-production with Royal Exchange Manchester.
Wonderful.
And Black Theatre Live. And we're going to be opening in Manchester in March, and then touring throughout England till end of May. So we've got an amazing tour set up. This is a adaptation of a book by Helen Say called Sweet Mandarin. The play is called Mountains, The Dreams of Lily Kwok, and it's been adapted by Insuk Chappell, who's a wonderful writer. And we've got the amazing Jennifer Tang, who's directing, who's currently at the RSC. This is going to be a really, really wonderful piece. It's a family memoir. It spans a few hundred years, moving from China to Hong Kong to UK. It's very much a migrant story, but it's also about memory. It's a grandmother who meets a granddaughter and what they discover, their family secrets, and what pulls them through actually is an entrepreneurial spirit, and food is their lifeline. Because the Helen who wrote the book she runs this amazing restaurant in Manchester called Sweet Mandarin, which is a wonderful piece. But it's about following that culture and their roots back through from China. It's wonderful. It's going to be really, really exciting. I
will
wait.
definitely be along to see it. I cannot
Yes.
wait. So, what's left on your bucket list? What do you still want to do?
What do I still want to do as a director, as a theatre?
Just as Kumiko.
As Kumiko. Well, I'd like to do a little bit more travelling now, because I think my kids are slightly getting older now. And I went back to Japan for the first time in many, many years this summer. And that was just really exciting. And I went to do some work out there, went to do some teaching, and just very, and I do want to do a little bit more of that, find some more time to go get out of England, because, it's easy to get sort of sucked into everything happening here. But I think it's really important to have that outward looking, sensibility and just be aware of what's going on, especially, getting in touch more with Asia as well for me, for East Asia. I think that would be really good. So there's lots of places I haven't been to, which I'd love to go to.
And what do you think you can be better at? What do you want to improve upon?
What do I want to improve upon? I just want to... it's a funny thing. There was an article I was reading about confidence, and it's such a slippery thing. And it's a really interesting, and some people don't suffer from that, but I think there's something about having that confidence to go forward. Yes, I sound confident, but, we all have our moments. We're thinking, oh my goodness, is this right? Am I doing the right thing? How can I do this better? I just want to keep moving forward, be positive, be open, be accessible, and, make the work accessible. That's really important for me. And, I think it's and really, be a beacon. I love the company to be a beacon to young British Asians or other British Asians, and think, yes, I'm really happy to be part of Yellow Earth and be part of this movement, to get more British East Asians on our stages and screens, and creating and putting our stories out there.
Hi, I'm Alexis Gerard, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with the brilliant Andrew Keats. And I mean that, and not just because he slipped me a cheeky 20.
If I were to strand you on tour at Whitley Bay, it's basically the Show People podcast version of Desert Island Discs, and you are only allowed to take a select few items with you. Firstly, what would be the album that you would take with you?
It's interesting. Oh gosh, what would I take as an album? I say that because I I have funny relationship to albums. What would I take? There's a wonderful album that Joji Hirota created, who actually we worked with last year in Tamburlaine. He's a phenomenal drummer, and him and a Chinese flautist, one of the Guo brothers, and it's called Red Ribbon. I'd love that.
I'll check it out.
It
sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
And what would be the book?
What would be the book? Oh, God, I find it really difficult selecting one thing.
You already get a copy, by the way, new rules are you already get a copy of the Bible for firewood.
What if I don't want that? Yeah, exactly. Firewood, okay.
And you get a copy of the complete works of Shakespeare as well.
Okay.
After a while, I was getting sick of people going, Hamlet. So you get your copy of Shakespeare as well.
Okay. What would I take? What would be the one book? Probably something I haven't read. I've yet to read it, and when I read it, I'll think, oh, that's the one. I don't know. I can't.
Why has no one ever thought of saying that as a response before? One I haven't read, and that's very long.
Yeah, very long, and it will be very good.
And what would be the play? You can't use the same answer.
What would be the play? King Lear. Oh, but I've already got King Lear.
Already got it in your compendium of Shakespeare.
I should be saying something right. Amy Ng's next play.
Amy Ng's next play. And the musical.
We're working on at the moment, so lots of resonance for us. Yes.
And the musical.
And the musical, actually, I'm not going to say Pacific Overtures. The bar of no, what's it called? Sorry, my musical knowledge is absolutely rubbish. The ones with the pies, you know.
Oh, Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, Sweeney Todd. Thank you.
The one with the pies.
Yes, the one with the pies. Love that.
I still don't want to take The King and I with you. You sure?
No. It's all right. I'll give it a miss. No, I did see a bit of it on TV, but
and thought, I would rather stare at paint dry.
Yeah.
And you can take one luxury item. What would it be?
My dog.
Oh, you can take your dog. What's your dog's name?
Fen.
And he's a spaniel, isn't he?
He's a spaniel, yeah.
Well, it's now time for another Show People challenge. And this one is called Funny 5 Minutes. I have in front of me some of the most pointless, silly, daft questions that I could possibly ask you, just to lighten the mood, because I am always a fan of a happy ending. So you have 5 minutes to answer as many of these as possible. You are allowed 3 passes, but use them wisely.
Oh, God.
Kumiko Mendl, let's play Funny 5 Minutes. Kumiko, what is your worst habit?
Farting.
What's the worst note you've ever been given?
Do better.
What's the most expensive thing you've ever bought?
Oh, my car, but it's not very expensive.
Where's the strangest place you've ever had a wee?
In the middle of Blackheath. I was with a travelling circus. We had no toilets, so we had to go somewhere.
If someone narrated your life, who would it be?
You.
Aww. What is your least favourite television show?
Oh, God, least favourite? I don't watch it.
Is that a pass?
That's a pass. That's why it's my least.
Pass. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Who would play you in a movie of your life? Probably a white person.
Yes, exactly.
Who would it be?
Who would it be? Jess Henwick.
Jess Henwick. If you were an animal, what would you be?
I'd be a hedgehog. No, yes, hedgehogs.
Hedgehogs are nice. Who is the most famous person you've ever met?
What's his name?
Oh, him.
Yeah.
Is that a pass?
Oh, Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen. What would your last meal be?
My last meal would have to be something Japanese.
Anything particular?
Some sushi and miso soup.
What's your favourite Disney film?
What's my favourite Disney film? Dumbo.
Aww. If you had to fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses, what would it be?
One horse-sized duck.
Why is that?
Because I think ducks are fascinating. Why not? There's a duck on one of our posters for Fable for Now. It just sort of made me think of that duck.
So you're just thinking about, befriending the duck for marketing purposes?
Yes. Just trying to get Typhoon in there, yeah.
If one song were to sum you up, what would the song be?
What would the song be? Pass.
If you were to order a pizza, what would your order be?
It would have to have anchovies, artichoke, spinach, egg, salami, peppers, mushroom, onions.
So a customisable pizza rather than a typical sort of meat feast.
Yeah.
And what is your least favourite word?
The C word.
And what's the meaning?
I got called it once.
Did you?
A black C.
What?
In Norwich.
What do you think the meaning of life is?
Meaning of life is to keep on living.
How do you like your eggs in the morning?
Ooh, sunny side up.
Are you an early riser or a night owl?
Oh, early riser.
Do you have a teddy bear?
Not anymore.
What? Why did you get rid of it?
I think it disintegrated.
What was it called?
What was it called? That thing.
That thing. Well, next time I visit Blackheath, I will be thinking of you. Well, sadly, that is all the time we have left. But before we go, not only do I want to thank my special guest for giving her time and appearing on the Show People podcast, but I'm sure I can say on behalf of many, many listeners, thank you for being just such an amazing theatrical soldier and the extraordinary work you do. Please go mad for the wonderful Miss Kumiko Mendl.
Thank you so much. I loved it.
Well, Kumiko, tell me, just to reiterate, how can people keep up to date with all that you're up to? What's your Twitter account?
My Twitter account is at Kumiko Mendl. That's Kumiko Mendl.
And and Yellow Earth, how do they keep up to date with those updates as well?
Twitter account's at Yellow Earth UK. And we've also got an Instagram account now. It's all new.
I will be following you this afternoon.
Yes, please do.
Make sure you are following Kumiko and just follow her extraordinary work and the work of the company that she represents. This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. If you love the podcast or if you can support the work we do, we have now launched a Show People podcast shop. That's right. Christmas is coming, so make sure you get yourself a Show People teddy bear. I might need to get one for Kumiko now. I've learned that hers has fallen apart. To visit the shop and to find out all of the various ways you can help us, like making a monthly donation, visit www.arianproductions.com/showpeople. You can also help by giving us an iTunes review. Please do that, as the magical Apple algorithms, the more 5-star reviews we get, nice reviews, the higher we get in the charts, and the more likely we will be getting to raise our charts in the new and noteworthy section. Lastly, if you've got any comments, ideas, things you want to send into the show, things that you want to reach me and talk about, you can reach me on Twitter at Andrew Keats. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com, or, and this is really fabulous, I've been so pleased with how well it's been going, visit our new Show People podcast forum, where we can discuss issues such as yellowface, such as whitewash casting, and anything else that we discuss on the show or you think we should, at our Facebook page, facebook.com/showpeoplepodcast. You're listening to the Show People podcast, and remember, just be better.
See, I'm British East Asian, mate. I don't have the same cultural background as you.
Oh no, but you must love The King and I. That must be your favourite. Surely.
Never seen it actually.
No, that's the
I'm
quote.
proud to say.
Kumiko, that will be the episode title. King and I ? Never seen it.
Yeah.
Kumiko Mendl. Brilliant.